This is the Lessons in Positivity videocast. Here's your host, Scott Peterson.
We're excited about another great episode of Positive Athletes Lessons in Positivity today. What a treat to have a chance to talk to Hall of Fame pitcher and Fox television baseball analyst, John Smoltz. You don't have to be a baseball fan to appreciate what John has to say about life, sports, and the importance of an optimistic attitude. Later in the show, we'll talk to Zack Brightman, a high school pitcher from California who was born without a fibula. Now that's a long bone in your leg. He's competing and succeeding now, which is absolutely incredible. But first, here's our conversation with baseball legend John Smoltz. This week's Lessons in Positivity. Joining us today is John Smoltz, Hall of Fame pitcher of the Atlanta Braves. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You know, you're known as a Hall of Fame pitcher, and everybody kind of knows that, but you played multiple sports as a kid. Why do you think that's important for kids to play sports more than just, honing in on one particular sport?
Yeah, I really believe everything that I was able to do in Michigan now, that was the benefit of living in Michigan. Each sport had a seasonal change. So when the season changed, you knew you were switching sports. Unlike some other cities and some other states where you can play year-round, the challenge there is obviously how do you prevent those kids from playing a year-round sport? I think the balance of all the sports that I played, football, basketball, baseball, helped me learn things that I was able to use in my career as a baseball player that ultimately was going to take me farther than the other two sports. But I loved playing all the different sports. I think there's kids, athletics, athletes that they're so athletic that they're given an opportunity to play sports. And the next thing you know, they're forced at a young age to make a choice because the entities that are out there are trying to fight for athletes. And by doing that, they're trying to promote their sport. And by promoting their sport, they're putting the kid, I think, at a risk for burnout, for injuries, and for really enjoying life. Like as a 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old, that should be the most enjoyable times of your life to experience what other sports are like. And the benefit would be to play as many of them as you can. And unfortunately, that's not the case. It seems to be this new generation.
You played basketball, and so what does a sport like basketball teach you that you can kind of bring to baseball and pitching?
Well, with basketball, of course, your footwork is going to be very important. Your foot speed and just the way that you move around. The balance of the basketball court helped my body develop universally rather than just one side. If all I did was play baseball, it would have one side dominant. My right side would have overtaken my left. Therefore, injuries increase and the risk of injuries increase because you have an imbalance in your body. A one-sided sport is not good to play year-round. That's including golf, throwing a football, baseball. Those things, if you're not careful and don't develop the rest of your body, you'll see that if I stood up, my right shoulder is going to drop lower than my left shoulder. And basketball was a sport that not only physically and from a cardio standpoint was the way that I stayed in the best shape. Well, I can say it now, I wouldn't say it then, but when I was training in my career, I played basketball all off season. And that was the best way to stay in shape. Now, fortunately, I played with people that weren't trying to hurt me, and I didn't incur a lot of injuries, but those are the sports that I love to play because of the intrigue of the difference between each one of them. You had to think differently, and of course, physically, it demanded different attributes of your body.
You have a strong opinion about kids throwing too much, throwing all year round, and how that's relating to some of the injuries kids are having now at a young age, getting Tommy John surgery at young ages. Talk a little bit about that and what's your theory on that?
Yeah, so it's a little bit flawed in what people think when I say they throw too much. I mean, they throw competitive pitches way too much. Throwing a baseball is not that bad for your arm if it's under control, like playing catch and learning your mechanics and repeating your mechanics, getting off the mound. We threw more with less exertion. And today kids throw more with I call it redlining. They're throwing as hard as they can every single time. They're putting their engine, if that was a car, in a red line situation where eventually it's going to blow. So I would be more of an advocate for throwing more but less effort. I think every child that competes in a sport today that isn't recreational but is club sports are going to throw too many competitive pitches. If they had a chance to look back in life and go, why did I burn up my resources so early? It wouldn't make sense on how we're going about this. More's not better early. I mean, so what? You got a 0.9 ERA and you're 10 years old. Big deal. That's getting you nowhere. If you can't throw the ball at the level you need to throw it when you get to high school, you're not going to college. If you can't throw the ball at the level you need to throw it at college, you're not going to the pros. So we've got this upside down triangle working, and it really is working because the business of sports is making more money than is making great players. Now we've got it backwards because the great player and the athlete is going to survive more systems than the average player, but that doesn't mean that they're still not increasing their injury rate. So I threw a rubber ball against a brick wall growing up my whole life. I had flexibility, loose lie. I didn't experience issues till I got to pro ball. That's the best case to get those issues because you can learn how to work them out. If my issues all started young, I would be a wreck with all the different things that I would have to deal with at a young age.
I've heard you say you wished you would have enjoyed the moment a little bit more, even when you had all your success with the Braves and all of that. But looking back on your career, that you wish you'd enjoyed the moment. Is that something that young players should be thinking about too, in terms of just enjoy whatever level you're at, and wherever it goes, it's going to go?
Yeah, what I would be talking about there was I was such a perfectionist that no matter what I did or no matter what success at the time I was having, I was trying to attain that more and more. And so I wasn't taking the time to enjoy what the purity of playing the game that as a young kid you just love, right? There's no strings attached. You just get the opportunity to play and you play. When you get to a business or you get to a livelihood, and the business of baseball can zap you sometimes of that enjoyment. And what I was learning was how in the moment to smile. That doesn't mean I'm not going to become the fierce competitor that I was and let my guard down. It was that I was actually going to take time to enjoy the moment. And I learned to do that later in my career and appreciate the finer things of the game. But I was always driven to be the best version that I could be, and nothing was going to change that, except I wasn't allowing myself to pause and go, job well done, way to go, you gave your best effort. And when I looked at that way differently, when I looked at the game differently, I started to enjoy more of those moments.
You know, you mentioned when you're not having teammates, and as a pitcher, one of the frustrations can be, I've seen young pitchers get frustrated with players who don't make plays for them after they made a great pitch, got a guy to ground out, but the guy boots it. And how do you, body language is very important to the rest of your team, isn't it? It seems like you had a great relationship with your fielders behind you.
Yeah, that's one thing, again, you got to learn, because body language is huge in sports, and you can give the wrong body language and it can cost you a job. It can cost you the perception of what you're actually thinking or being on the mound. And learning how to do this, separate the outcome from, again, the attention to detail. So Greg Maddux used to tell me, once you deliver a good pitch, it's out of your hand. The outcome sometimes isn't indicative of how you actually made a really good pitch. And the same thing works for a play that's made or not made. Those things are going to come and go. You can't try harder to strike everybody out if you have no confidence in the players behind you. And the one thing you have to have is this mindset of, I'll pick you up. You pick me up a lot, I'm going to pick you up because you didn't make this play. And the opportunity and the thought process you have as a pitcher really determines how far you're going to go to be successful and how long of a career you're going to have. Because if you don't change some of those, if you become too definitive and black and white, you're gonna have a hard time succeeding in this game. It's a game of adjustments, and it's a game that's not totally fair all the time with how the outcome does indicate your performance. And so I learned that executing a pitch the way I wanted to do it and letting that ball go released me of any connection to what the outcome can be sometimes. And that takes a little bit of time and practice to put into play.
You're doing work now on Fox MLB broadcasts, have done the World Series, and are doing broadcasting on the MLB Network games. How hard is it for you to be critical of a player's performance, and that when it has to be, people, the expectation is you're the analyst and you need to say something. How do you balance that with how you used to be able to balance in the clubhouse?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I've learned is that this game is hard, always will be hard. Don't ever forget that. And I never wanted to broadcast like I never made a mistake or never gave up a run. The game is hard, and if a player makes a mistake, you explain why he's capable of making a mistake. Now, if he makes the same mistake 3 times, then you have to be a little bit more critical. That cannot continue. There has to be an adjustment that takes place. I'm more into the selfishness of a player or an at-bat or something in the game that shows he's more selfish than the team aspect. That's where the criticism will say something like, okay, this at-bat in the 7th inning and down by 2, runner on third, less than 2 outs, he swung and missed 3 times from his heel. That's a selfish at-bat. That was not an at-bat that moved the runner in, even if it gave up an opportunity for him to give a hit. Certain things within the game make sense to me, that I know every intricacies of the game. I've played every scenario out, that I can actually respond to a player even in the moment of his losing his temper or losing sight of it, and explain why that's capable, why that's possibly could happen. Now, if that player does it over and over and over again, then I can't justify why those actions are good, because the viewer at home and the young player at home is watching the same thing I'm watching, and they're going to look at me and say, okay, he's biased or he's not seeing what I'm seeing. Have some reality to what's going on and not make the game so easy that in other sports you hear other broadcasters talk about things like, what in the world is he thinking? How could he try that? That's when you lose reality to the sport you play, because that happened when you played. And to think that it never should happen again when you're broadcasting is missing the whole.
John, you do a lot of things for the community, and you give back, and you've been involved with a lot of charities. Why is that important to you?
I was instilled with me, with my family, and how important it is in the community we are in. And if I was ever given a platform, to use that platform the right way. And that platform might be too high for a lot of us celebrities and athletes. I really believe that sometimes it's out of balance, but use that platform in the right way to bring an awareness or a cause or a charity that otherwise didn't have a voice. And so from some of the things that I've been part of and the efforts that have been by a lot of other people, and my name became the name up front, I was trying to do my small part. I started as a Christian school in 2000. That is flourishing in a way where I can watch it grow and become a huge part, and financially with that place, as well as pioneering it and putting together the board and all those things that have to happen. But for strike out hunger or any kind of cause that's come my way, there hasn't been a lot that's impacted my family per se where I would naturally go to that. But I always believed that wherever I lived and wherever community needed the impact, that I would try to give my best to make that happen. And it's been a great relationship here in Atlanta. I've been with some organizations for over 30 years, and what a better way to give of my resources and my abilities that bring together a cause. It's pretty humbling.
What advice would you give to a kid who's in middle school right now and in high school, playing any sport? It doesn't have to be baseball. What advice would you give them about going forward in wherever their career is going to take them in the sport?
Yeah, I think having your priorities in check and being able to lay out a game plan of dreaming, right? I mean, I think I used to have this saying, if you don't believe it, you'll never dream it. If you don't dream it, you'll never achieve it. I think the one thing about me as a young kid is I had big dreams. Nobody back then, with all the social media that didn't exist, told me that my dreams were stupid or that there was no way I could achieve it. And I think there's more readily available people to tell people what they can't do, and people shy away from being bold and creating their own passions. That to me is a saddened place to be because of social pressure. And I think if I was a youngster growing up today, whatever resources that are out there that allow me to become and achieve my goals, I'm all in. If my parents allow me to do it, I created a backyard here in my house that I thought my kids would just absolutely enjoy the heck out of it, because I thought I would. I knew I would, but it wasn't in their passion to be outside 24/7. I had this huge bell that knew I would ring to tell them to come in. It's for dinner. That bell was rang for me because I was outdoors a lot. So my passion is not necessarily my kid's passion, but for a young child who is trying to figure out life, go for it. Find out what the things you are to like, and then figure out a game plan of how you're going to achieve that. Don't listen to all the noise, and then let somebody you trust to be realistic to see yourself in a light to where, okay, there's a chance, or really we need to move on from this. You know, if there's some things you can't do, but you believe you're still going to be able to do, that's a different challenge. You know, I mean, if you can't throw a baseball 60 feet, probably not going to be a pitcher. But if you believe you want to be a pitcher, you've got to have certain attributes you can be able to do to have your dreams and realistic, in view.
John, thanks for sharing this time with all of these coaches and kids that are playing sports. The words that you speak are obvious, that you're a positive athlete, and you've always been one since I've known you. And we wish you the best, and especially during this time period when everybody's kind of not getting a chance to play their sports. It's good to hear from people like yourself who have a great perspective when this thing gets going again. So thanks so much for taking time with us today, John.
My pleasure, and I'd like to encourage one last time, even though you're not playing your sports, there's little things you can do now in your time off to increase your chances when you do play your sports again. So discipline and balance are going to win out, I promise you.
Each week we feature a different athlete from our book, The Positive Athlete, 100 Inspirational Stories of High School Student Athletes. You can check out and purchase the book on our website, positiveathlete.org. This week we featured Zack Brightman, who's on page 27 of the book. If you ever have to go through some kind of surgery, you're going to want to hear Zack's story. It's up next on Lessons in Positivity. We're joined by Zack Brightman from Sherman Oaks, California. Goes to Chaminade College Preparatory High School. And Zack, welcome to the program.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Hello.
So Zack, you were born without a fibula, which is that long bone in your leg. And so how did they fix that so that you could play sports?
Well, I've had to have 2 bone lengthening procedures, which were about a year long each. And then I've had an ankle reconstruction surgery, which is another 6 months away from sports. And then I've had 2 8 plates in my knee.
So that's a grueling process. How many different surgeries did you have to have in full? Because there was some when you were born, right? And then there were some that you had to take on later on.
Well, the first surgery I had was when I was 9 years old. And then ever since then, I've had the 2 major ones, which are the bone lengthening procedures, and then a bunch of other smaller ones, taking metal in and metal out of my whole leg.
So that sounds really foreign for anybody watching. It's a bone lengthening. How do you have any idea what the process is of lengthening a bone?
Yeah, so the first one I had an external fixator, so it was around my whole tibia, and what we did is we had to screw slowly just to lengthen the bone, but not too fast, so it wouldn't heal too fast. Every single day, multiple times a day.
Wow, that had to be painful. So what motivated you to go through all of this? Was it just about playing sports, or did you just kind of want to be a normal kid?
I just wanted to be back on the field with my friends, be normal, just have a normal life like everyone else did.
Yeah, that's when you lose that camaraderie with your friends and stuff like that hurts a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was not fun watching everything from the sidelines.
So when you came back to school, you were in a wheelchair, and I think you said maybe there was a walker involved at some point. Were you ever embarrassed in front of the other kids that you had to be in those kinds of things?
At the first I was embarrassed, but once I saw all the support from like my friends and family and everyone just always being there for me, I ended up getting really used to it, and everyone else was used to it.
Yeah, you've talked about how the support of your friends and family was so important. Like the kids at the school couldn't wait to be the first one to push you in the wheelchair. So why is that so important to you that your friends and family came behind you like that?
Just knowing that I had people there that would support me and help me throughout everything I had to go through, and knowing that no matter what, they'd be there for me.
What advice would you give to a high school athlete? No, not very many high school athletes had the issue you had, but you've had other friends who've had ACL injuries or maybe even Tommy John and stuff. What advice do you give to a kid who is going through some kind of a medical related issue about how to approach getting back and playing the sport that you love again?
I would tell them to just keep working hard, trust your doctors, your physical therapists, and always just remember that sport will be waiting for you when you're done, and you can always compete at any level.
Zach, do you think that positivity is a choice?
Yeah, I think it's also more of just a mindset, and you always got to look on the bright side about everything, because when I was in wheelchairs or when I had walkers, I'd always try to have as much fun as possible and include my friends in the stuff that I was doing. And yeah, so I think positivity is just more of a mindset, and you gotta stay positive throughout everything.
Well, you can see Zach, actually, you made the cover of our book, The Positive Athlete, and a great story inside. We hope everybody will have a chance to pick up the book and read more about Zach's story, and he tells a little bit more in detail about that. Zach, thanks so much for joining us today, and good luck to you for the rest of this season. I hope you get a chance to play baseball again.
Same. Thank you guys so much.
Well, that's it for this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed these conversations with John Smoltz and Zack Brightman. Both of them are true definitions of a positive athlete. If you would like to read the story of Zack Brightman and 99 other high school positive athletes with inspirational stories, ask your mom and dad for our book, The Positive Athlete. You can find out more about the book on our website, positiveathlete.org. We'll see you again next time on Lessons in Positivity.